The history of the publication of Nicolás Gómez Dávila's work is an unusual one. He is one of those rare authors who were first read and made known abroad. In Germany and Austria, of all places, where Germany, as a land of the Reformation and the literally irredeemable philosophy of the 19th century, was actually the least prepared of all European countries for such a discovery. Of all European countries, the ill-prepared Germany should have met with invincible incomprehension the Catholic and anti-philosopher who criticized the Second Vatican Council, but this was not the case. The professor of philosophy, Franz Niedermeyer, had brought some aphorisms back from Columbia as samples. The conservative journal Kritikon, published by Baron Schrenk-Notzing, printed them, where the Viennese publisher of the Karolinger Verlag, Dr. Peter Weiss, read them and immediately recognized their extraordinary quality, then traveling to Santa Fe de Bogota to introduce himself to the master and acquire all rights to his work except of the Spanish. After the publications of the first volumes of selections, the left liberal newspaper, Die Zeit, published a major collective review by Boto Strauss, a very important author of playwrights mainly, who presented Gómez Dávila along with Pavel Florensky, David Jones, the poet in the near Ezra Pound, and George Steiner. Since then, he has found a small but serious audience in Germany, and from Vienna, it has been translated into other European languages, though unfortunately not yet into English. Through my friend Günther Maschke, who advised Karolinger Verlag, I had already become acquainted with this first selection when it was published, unfortunately not under its original programmatic title, Glossen zu einem impliziten Text, but under the rather lamentable title of Einsamkeiten, which did so little justice to the temperament and intentions of an author who never bothered to disseminate his work. After a few pages, I knew that I would not find another author in the 20th century who spoke so much from my heart, a strict teacher who anticipated what I did not dare to think, who, after more than 30 years of reading, asserts his authority and helps me to live as only a true philosophy can. One of the fortunate things in my life was that I was able to meet him just before he died. 1993, I met a man who was already very ill and had been dragging himself along for 10 years. Since years, he lived only in silken pajamas, but in younger years, he had been of a provocative elegance with impeccable white gaiters. What I particularly liked about him was the absence of the wisdom of old age, that desolate stoicism that is not moved by pain or joy, and he did not hide his restrained anger at being old and sick. Even in his weakened state, his capacity for grief, passion, and love had not left him. Columbia had become foreign to him. He felt out of place there. He said, "My mother country is the Catholic Church." In his opinion, she should have lived in Paris. France made me, as he was often to state. He regretted to have been not rich enough to do so. In Bogota, despite having a few loyal friends, he felt like an exile. Indeed, in his distant dignity, he was surrounded by the aura of an exiled king, not one of the last century, of course, but, for example, Charles V. None of our contemporary celebrities, as far as they are visible to the public, has a comparable, awe-inspiring effect, which is, of course, also due to the fact that he was indifferent to any kind of effect on others. The great man's appearance, his gestures, and his way of life as expressed in the stately style of the surroundings he created were in perfect harmony with his work. The ascetic solemnity of the furnishing of his house, created in the 20s of the last century, had apparently never been supplemented by anything other than more and more new books. He loved particularly a very cool salon with red and silver furnitures of colonial Baroque, far from any idea of coziness. As in Goethe's house in the Frauenplan, the person of the inhabitant was palpable in his house. For me, the images of his rooms come to mind when I read the aphorisms. That there should have been such a man in the 20th century who came out only in the very end of it, out from complete obscurity, even led some German intellectuals to regard him as an artificial construction. Well, he was not a construction. I have seen him. When the cultural decline of my lifetime depresses me too much, I remember that in this meantime, as Hölderlin says, in dürftiger Zeit, I was once again able to encounter a classical author.